Vidyapati, the author of the name Vidyapati, and Jayadev, of the name Jayadev, Chandidasera, of the name Chandidas, Gita, their songs, Asvadena, tastes, Ramananda, of the name Ramananda, Swarupa, of the name Swarupa, Sahita, along with. Translation: the Lord used to read the books of Vidyapati, Jayadev and Chandidas, relishing their songs with his confidential associates like Sri Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar Goswami. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Vidyapati was a famous composer of songs about the pastimes of Radha Krishna. He was an inhabitant of Mithila, born in a Brahmin family. It is calculated that he composed his songs during the reign of King Shivasimha and Queen Lakshmi Dev in the beginning of the 14th century of the Sakar era, almost 100 years before the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The 12th generation of Vidyapati's descendants is still living. Vidyapati's songs about the pastimes of Lord Krishna express intense feelings of separation from Krishna, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu relished all those songs in his ecstasy of separation from Krishna. Jayadev was born during the reign of Maharaj Lakshman Seth of Bengal in the 11th or 12th century of the Sakar era. His father was Bhojadev and his mother was Vamadev. For many years he lived in Navadvip, then the capital of Bengal. His birthplace was in the Bourbon district in the village Kedu Bilba. In the opinion of some of the authorities, however, he was born in Orissa, and still others say he was born in southern India. He passed the last days of his life in Jagadhpuri. One of his famous songs is Gita Govinda, which is full of transcendental mellow feelings of separation from Krishna. The gopis felt separation from Krishna before the rasa dance, as mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Gita Govinda expresses such feelings. There are many commentaries on the Gita Govinda by many Vaishnavas. Chandidas was born in the village of Nanura, which is also in the Birbhum district of Bengal. He was born of a Brahmin family, and it is said that he also took birth in the beginning of the 14th century of the era. It has been suggested that Chandidas and Vidyapati were great friends because the writings of both express the transcendental feelings of separation profusely. The feeling of ecstasy described by Chandidas and Vidyapati were actually exhibited by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He relished all these feelings in the role of Sri Radharani, and his appropriate associates for this purpose were Sri Ramananda Roy and Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami. These intimate associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu helped the Lord very much in his pastimes, in which he felt like Radharani. Purport still continues. I just want to make a comment. When I flip this page, it reminds me of the old days, because this page is substantially thick. So when you have substance here in this book, you can really feel the substance. These days the pages are a lot thinner as times go past. Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments in this connection that such feelings of separation as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enjoyed from the books of Vidyapati, Chandidas and Jayadev are especially reserved for persons like Sri Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar, who were Paramahamsas, men of topmost perfection, because their advanced spiritual consciousness. Such topics are not to be discussed by ordinary persons imitating the activities of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. for critical students of mundane poetry and literary men without God consciousness who are after bodily sense gratification, there is no need to read such a high standard of literature. Persons who are after sense gratification should not try to imitate Raganuga devotional service. In their songs, Chandidas, Vidyapati and Jayadev have described the transcendental activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mundane reviewers of the songs of Vidyapati, Jayadev and Chandidas simply help people in general become debauchees, and this leads only to social scandals and atheism in the world. One should not misunderstand the pastimes of Radha Krishna to be activities of mundane young boy and girl. The mundane sexual activities of young boys and girls are most abominable. Therefore, those who are in bodily consciousness and desire sense gratification are forbidden to indulge in discussions of transcendental pastimes of Sri Radha and Krishna. Om Ajnanaatimirandasya Jananjanat Salakaya Chakrun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Durgame Pati Mendasya Skalapate Katimahu Swakripa Yustu Danena Shantu Shantu Avalambanam. So Srila Prabhupada finished the purport off with some strong warnings about how not to misinterpret the spiritual activities of a Supreme Personality of Godhead and His eternal loving consort Srimati Radharani to be mundane. So here we have in the Krishnadas Kaviraj in the 13th chapter, just to sum it up very quickly, he's got a brief synopsis of the life of Lord Caitanya. Caitanya Maharaj was speaking about how Lord Caitanya in his first 24 years in his Navadvip pastime was engaged in implementing the Harinam Sankirtan, the yuga for this age, the jagya for this age of Kali Yuga, the sacrifice by the chanting of the sacred names of Hare Krishna and Ram in the form of Maha Mantra. So in his second 24 years, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was based in Jagannath Puri. So he took the order of sannyas and he went to Jagannath Puri, and for the first 6 years approximately he travelled the extent of India. He went far and wide in southern India, and he also went to Vrindavan. And then the next 6 years of his life in Jagannath Puri, he was seen chanting and propagating the glories of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, of course encouraging everybody else to do so. It was mantra for this age, Prativite, Chetato, Nada Harigram, Sarvatma, Prachari, more Nam, that in every town, village, the chanting, the glories of Hare Krishna will be heard. So the last 12 years he spent in solitude, relishing the mellows of Prema Bhakti, the Vipralamba, the deep ecstasy of separation in love from Krishna, the supreme state of God consciousness. So we hear about this in the Caitanya Caritamrita from his confidential associates. Srila Prabhupada glorifies the two associates that were with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They were very, very advanced devotees, Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy. In fact, in Guru Ganesh Deepika it said that they were associates of Krishna in their last lives, and they were the principal Shakis, Lalita and Vishaka, very confidential gopis who very confidential gopis of Radharani in Vrindavan Leela. So Radharani was the embodiment of the divine love of Krishna, and of course Krishna came to taste that love of Radharani in the form of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, combined as Radharani. But this feature of Krishna in the form of Radharani was hardly understood by all the other ages, the people in all the other ages. It was hardly described, even in the Srimad Bhagavatam, hardly described in the Shastras, even just scant mention in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's advent, we had some instances of great devotees who exhibited this great love between Krishna and Radha, and one of these was Madhavendra Puri, who was the grandfather, spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Of course, he initiated Ishvara Puri. He also initiated a lot of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates, Nityananda Prabhu being one, Advaita Acharya. And he was one of the first to exhibit these ecstatic manifestations of love for Krishna in the form of Radharani's love, in the state of Radharani's emotional love for Krishna. And sometimes it is said that Madhavendra Puri was so ecstatic he'd be walking along and he'd see a tamal tree, which is a blackish colour. It's supposed to be the closest colour to Krishna, the colour of a tamal tree. Who remembers the tamal tree? Anyone? You've seen many tamal trees there? You've seen? I've seen one. There was one in Vrindavan that I knew was a tamal tree. It was actually combined. It was combined with tamal, and it was also a white tree. It's supposed to be the Krishna Balaram tree. You know that one? It's out the back. Is it still there? That was 50 years ago. Still there? It's very nice. So, Krishna. So when Madhavendra Puri saw a tamal tree, sometimes he'd faint. Other times he'd be so ecstatic, thinking about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, that he'd forget to eat. One time he was in Vrindavan, and he was chanting under a tree, very ecstatically thinking about Krishna. He hadn't eaten, so this little cowherd boy appeared in front of him and said, "Excuse me, Babaji, but I noticed that you haven't had anything to eat, but no one in Vrindavan starves here, so please take this milk and have this milk to drink." So Madhavendra Puri, a little bit surprised at how this little boy knew about him, he took the milk, and then when he tasted the milk, he exhibited all the ecstatic symptoms of manifestation of love of Krishna, and then all of a sudden he realized Krishna himself had given me this milk. So he was very, very, very ecstatic. So Krishna Krishna looked after him. So of course, with Madhavendra Puri we can go on, but he was a great soul. It's just one very interesting thing about him was that in the Gaura Ganesh Dipika describes that he was a Kalpavriksha tree in Vrindavan. He was a desire tree that could fulfill all of Krishna's desires. This is just, of course, that in Vrindavan everything is cognizant. So whether you're a bird or a bee or a tree, even Krishna's flute, you have a relationship with Krishna, a cognizant relationship with Krishna. It's just the amazing thing, especially in Vrindavan, a Kalpavriksha tree can fulfill all of Krishna's desires. So that is the nature of the spiritual world. Even in the native, in the mother tongue Sanskrit, that everything has a gender, so either male or female. And even the French language is also, when I learned French, I think it's the same also, correct me if I'm wrong, there's probably other languages too, everything is la or la tree, what is it? L'arbre and whatever. So, but in our particular language, because of the way we've been travelling in our society and we're losing our God consciousness, this over the centuries, this English language is rather depersonalised. So the trees are known as, so everything is an object, the trees, the ocean, the wind, the sun, and the moon. But in Sanskrit it's way more personalised. When you think of moon, who do you think of? Chandra, the personality. Who do you think of when you see the sun? Bhivaswan, right? So everything is personalised there. So that's a reflection of Vrindavan, that everything is personalised in Vrindavan there. So Madhavendra Puri had that. He had those symptoms of ecstasy, that he was totally absorbed in Krishna consciousness, and towards the end of his life he was served very nicely by his disciple Ishvara Puri, who became the spiritual master of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who very much looked after him because he could hardly move, but he was still crying out just even before crying out in separation of Krishna in the mood of Radharani. Oh my Lord, Master of Atura, not seeing you, my heart has become afflicted. Oh beloved, I'm overwhelmed. What shall I do now? And he was in this mood, expressing this mood, and one of his disciples, this, what do you call it, very, very colourful character, you might say, the best way to describe it. His name was Ramachandra Puri, and he was also a very critical character. In fact, he was so critical that even Caitanya Mahaprabhu himself was afraid of him. So Ramachandra Puri, he happened to wander in when Madhavendra Puri Prabhu was chanting in this mood of separation. He said, "Why are you crying like this? Just chant Govinda. Just about to leave your body, chant Govinda." Madhavendra Puri looked at him and said, "Get him out of here. Take him out." So why are we chanting Govinda? So sometimes it's also that the sahajas, they are trying to, Prabhupada gives a very, very elaborate explanation of the people who misconstrue Krishna consciousness, and one such type of person is the sahaja, who will emulate this ecstasy, that tears are coming out. Sometimes it's said they put onion skins or something there close to their eyes so the tears are coming out. They emulate this, but as you can, and then they're rolling on the ground. Actually, when I first came to Vrindavan as a devotee in 1978, I saw this happening. That, there's a group of people, and all of a sudden they're looking at this person who's on the ground, rolling this way, rolling that way. I'm sure a lot of devotees who live in India have seen this happen a lot of times. I don't know if it's happening as much now. Prabhupada just gave us one instruction when these people did that. He said, kick them out. Like that. Because these people here, this is the symptoms of manifestation of ecstasy in Madhavendra Puri, that he was a deeply realised soul. And these symptoms come for those souls who actually attain Krishna through the process of bhakti yoga. So everything else that is there is a show bottle, and it's a disturbance on society. Oh, this person is such a great soul. But actually, the sahajas are just not in control of their senses. They're not in control of their mind and intelligence, and they mislead society. So Prabhupada gives us a warning that very much we have to be understanding of our relationship with Krishna and Radha. So in our neophyte relationships, that we don't misconstrue that special lila that Radha and Krishna had. So therefore, that when we get to these esoteric pastimes that we're talking about, in this purport here where Lord Caitanya heard from these great souls, Vidyapati and Chandidas and Jayadev, that he would relish these, but they were very, very advanced pastimes for those who were pure in heart. So unless we've got rid of all the contamination, these material contaminations of our heart, and we're very much become totally connected with Krishna. Otherwise, if there's some material contamination there, then we may misconstrue and we become polluted ourselves. So that warning is there, particularly with some of these works that are still with us. So Padjavali and Chandidas are great saints, but I was not able to locate very much on them. They're not really talked about in our Shastras, our Vaishnava Shastras that we have available, but certainly Jayadev, he's outstanding. So Prabhupada describes that these Chandidas and Vidyapati, they were about 100 years before, so somehow or other Vaishnavas bob up. You don't know where they're going to bob up, at what century, at what time, what decade. It's rather amazing. So they came in the 14th century, and even before them, Jayadev appeared in the 11th and 12th centuries. So Jayadev was particularly outstanding, and his works are voluminous, and he had such an impact that we still sing his songs to this day. So when Jayadev appeared, he also was rather an amazing person. It's described that that just like we have, where are we up to now? So I'm not ready. I'll get to Jayadev in a minute. So we're just talking about Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Because when Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu relished these pastimes of Radha and Krishna, he opened up that second wave. First of all, he gave us the way forward for process of liberation, going back to Godhead through the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Very, very appropriate for the fallen souls in the age of Kali. But then, in his last 12 years, when he was relishing the pastimes of Radha Krishna, he introduced us to Radha and Krishna. So first we had these great souls, Vidyapati, in the early stages, just little pockets there. Then we had Madhavendra Puri, and Lord Caitanya, he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so he, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, introduced this high rasa to all us conditioned souls in the age of Kali. By rights, we're the least qualified. It says in Kali, there is no good qualities in Kali Yuga of all the people, but you're unlucky. So, manda samanda mataya. How did we get this? We're disturbed, lazy, misguided. We can see all these qualities manifesting, and yet we've been given this process of prema bhakti, the highest love, which we learn from Radharani's example of her service to Krishna. So we are supremely fortunate to be somehow or other that we've engaged in this process of bhakti yoga, and this is coming from Lord Caitanya. That is why this book that we're reading right now, the Caitanya Caritamrita, is said to be the highest, topmost Shastra of all the different Shastras. It's above all the voluminous Upanishads, Puranas, Rik, Sama, Yajurvedas, and it's also higher than the Srimad Bhagavatam because it delivers that highest love of Godhead. So how did we get here? It's quite amazing that here we are, somewhere by accident. We're all learning these shastras. So it's said that actually when Srila Prabhupada started this movement, he used some transcendental trickery to get us to join this Hare Krishna movement. Just in the early days, after the chanting, a lot of people would follow him into that little temple that he had on the 2nd Avenue, and he'd cook elaborate prasadam, beautiful prasadam, sabji, rice, puris, gulab jam, sweet rice, and they would eat and eat and eat. They were so full that they could hardly move. They were enjoying, oh, this is so great, this move is so great. Then a little while later, about a year later, all these devotees joined up, shaved heads, preaching Krishna consciousness, and they say, Srila Prabhupada, how come we don't have all these great feasts anymore? We don't really have all this sumptuous prasadam. And Prabhupada said, well, now that you have become a little bit advanced, it is not necessary. So it was a trickery, transcendental trick in the early days to trick you by your tongue. So we still have that secret weapon here. We have our prasadam, and everybody relishes prasadam here. We see all people come very skinny, but after a period of time they're going, oh, I've got to stop eating this, I can't stop. And out in the public, our secret weapon is the kofta ball. It's really amazing when you're sitting there in the restaurant and some person comes up out of the blue, some person sort of out of the ordinary, and order 6 kofta balls, right? They love their kofta balls. And at the festivals, everybody said, where have you guys been? Been waiting you for a whole year. I've been feeling separation from the koftas. So anyway, so we have the Vaishnav, the great Vaishnav poets there. As I said, there was not much that I could rustle up besides time's running short. So I want to talk a little bit about Jayadev, because he left so many esoteric literatures. The most supreme literature was Gita Govinda, which was the description of Radharani's separation from Krishna just before the Rasa dance. So as Srila Prabhupada describes, it's very, very high subject matter. So Vaishnavas usually don't study such deep, spiritually intimate literatures until the heart is purified from all material contamination, or consciousness is not polluted by our material desires. Because the mundane materialists, they actually misconstrue. If you think that Krishna was immortal, this is the big mistake that people make. They see that, oh, Krishna was dancing with the gopis, and they relate to it in immortal terms. So that is a big trap. So it's said that not many, their spiritual path becomes blocked, and that mundane concept stops them from making any tangible spiritual advancement. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Manusyanam Sahasrasu, that out of many thousands of monks, men who are looking for perfection, a few may attain perfection, but those who have attained perfection, hardly one knows to be in truth. So this is Vaishnava, and this is to get to know Krishna. So how lucky are we all sitting here hearing a little bit about Krishna Katha. In fact, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita also further down in the 7th chapter, Bahunam Janamanam Ate, many births, after many births, he who is actually in knowledge of me, knowing to be cause of all causes, comes to me in such a soul is very rare. So it takes a lot of effort, even though the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra, chanting of Hare Krishna, the philosophy, everything is so straightforward there. But just because of our contamination through many, many births in this age of Kali Yuga, we have to work hard at it to actually purify the heart. But the result is amazing. The result that we get Krishna praying beyond all the mundane pleasures of this material world, that we experience one drop, even to experience one drop of nectar, we'll be rolling on the ground in ecstasy and just laughing uncontrollably, all the symptoms of the hair standing on end. So that's just a little one drop of the spiritual nectar that is available there when we make the connection with Krishna. The fact that Krishna came in this age, that is rare in itself. I was having a discussion with someone and I just had this realization I want to share, that we just missed Krishna by 5,000 years. That is nothing, because actually 500 years is just a drop in the ocean of time, because Krishna only comes once in a day, Lord Brahma, right? And that day, Lord Brahma is like a combination of 1,000 of our yugas, and one yuga, one cycle of yugas is 4,300,000 years, so you multiply that by 1,000. So that's, I think, 8,640,000,000 or something like that, 8 billion, and we missed him by 5,000 years. But we really haven't missed him, because we're still here, we're connected to Krishna. Krishna's eternal. So I was just thinking about King Indra also, that this particular King Indra, even though he played so many tricks on Krishna, that he didn't understand Krishna's nature and he made it rain on him, but he was so lucky because he got to see Krishna. But in the day of Lord Brahma, there's actually 14 Indras, because the day of Lord Brahma you have 14 Manus, and every Manu lives for 72 yugas, 72 cycles, so there's 14 Indras. So this one saw Krishna, the other 13 missed out, and all the other demigods missed out. So this is the rarity of Krishna. So this is why we can understand that Krishna is very hard to understand, because the other people in the different yugas, they do not have that experience of Krishna. Just we're very lucky. So when Jayadev came, in the 11th century, he manifested symptoms of love of Krishna, and he wasn't any ordinary boy. It said that he was a prodigy, where Prabhupada gives the genealogy that he was born in Bengal of Brahmin parents, but his parents died very, very early when he was 7 years old. So at that point in time, a 7-year-old boy, well, you think he has not learnt enough to be able to sustain himself, but somehow or other Jayadev already had a vast knowledge of Sanskrit, just like the word prodigy. So we hear of prodigies that can play symphonies on the piano when they're young. At the age of 5, they're playing some Bach or Mozart or something, and other people pick up a violin. We have prodigies here. They are devotee kids. They pick up a harmonium and off they go. It's just we see there's this little 2-year-old. I don't know if he's 2-year-old. Every time he sees a madanga, he sort of makes for a madanga or starts to play the harmonium. So we understand that this is from our past lives. The standout is Ravi Shankar. Who knows Ravi Shankar? You all heard of? Because I don't know, I'm just testing you guys. I'm old, you know. Ravi Shankar was 30 years ago. Maybe nobody's... You heard of Ravi Shankar? See, there you go. There was this famous Indian sitar player who's standout, and he actually had a lot of influence over a lot of the modern groups, particularly the Beatles, particularly our devotee friend George Harrison, that George travelled with him, and he was a great devotee, and he was probably the most standout musician, like sitar player, because sitar is very complicated to play. But he explained that he'd been doing this for 7 lifetimes to achieve that level where he was at. So sometimes we carry our abilities, particularly our spiritual abilities, lifetime after lifetime. So it's with Vaishnavas. And sometimes it's said in Bhagavad Gita, we get a chance to resume our devotional service in our next life when we take birth in a pious family or a rich family. So at the age of 7, Jayadev, he built a hut on the Ganga and he just started composing all these beautiful songs about Krishna and Radha in Sanskrit, and people would go past and they'd hear this singing, and they expect to see this old bubba with a beard there and singing away, and they saw this young boy singing all these beautiful songs, all these proses. So as he got older, he was singing and composing, and one time in the court of the king, one of the musicians played one of Jayadev's melodies, and he thought, oh, it's just so wonderful. Where did that melody come from? And they said, oh, it come from Jayadev. He's by the banks of the river. He said, bring him to the court, and he can play for me. But the musicians laughed, said, hey, he's a sadhu. He doesn't come to king's courts. He's just happy living by the banks of the Ganges. So this king, Lakshman Sen, he was a very pious king. So then he dressed himself as just an ordinary citizen, and he went and he took darshan Jayadev and asked him, said, well, you know, can you play for me? I'm the king. And he said, well, I don't associate with materialistic people, because I'm just completely detached from the world, and I like it this way, the material world. So he said, I'll build you a little grove, a little forest there, and you can stay there just near the palace, near some bakula trees or champak trees. Was it? Champak trees, yeah. We have a champak tree down there we planted. The whole forest of champak trees, and I'll come and see you. Which he did. And after a period of time, he somehow or other ordered or gave the instruction that Jayadev go to Jagannath Puri, and he became the court poet there. And there was very quickly there was an elaborate story how he was the court poet and in the court of the king and in Jagannath Puri. And there was one particular Brahmin, a very, very pure Brahmin, had this wonderful daughter by the name of Padmavati. And when she was marriageable age, he did this really unorthodox thing, that he took a daughter to the deities, Lord Jagannath, and he said, Lord Jagannath, I'm giving you my daughter now. It's for you to arrange her marriage. And he started to walk off, and he left her there. And then Lord Jagannath spoke to him. He said, actually, best that you give this young girl to one of my Vaishnav devotees there by the name of Jayadev. He's very surrendered to me, so you go offer the daughter to him. So he did that. He found Jayadev, and he repeated that. They said, I have my daughter to present to you now. She is yours. See you later. This is not normally orthodox. This doesn't happen normally, but this is a special lila. So Jayadev, he was a brahmachari, so he was a celibate. He had no idea that he had no intention of getting married. So he looked at the girl. The father went away, and he said, well, I'll take you wherever you want to go, but you can't stay here. But the girl was very, very astute, very smart. And she said, you follow the Lord. Lord Jagannath spoke. I heard Lord Jagannath spoke to my father, and I heard what he said. He said that I had to marry you, and you're going to disobey the Lord like that? What sort of devotee will you be there? So he was caught. So he had to marry her. But she was very, very talented. She was a dancing girl, and she knew it wasn't dance, she was a dancer, and she knew all the different ragas, all the different Indian dances, and together they had a big influence on Indian dancing. I think all the devotees have been around for a while and have seen Indian dancing. We've seen the Das Strotum being performed, the 10 incarnations of Krishna, particularly in the Odisha style of dancing. So Jayadev was very influential there. What to speak of that beautiful song that he's created, the 10 incarnations of Krishna. And we keep singing that every day, at least 3 times a day, one of those verses. We know that one, don't we? Tavakara Kamalavari Nakama Bhuta Shringham. So that was one of the fourth verse of, and the other 9 are just equally as beautiful. I just wish I could hear them a lot more. And they're being sung they're still being sung to this day. So after Jagannath Puri, Jayadeva, he took his wife back to where he was in Kampakalata, and they lived there very simply, and he wrote the Gita Govinda. So just very quickly, just finish off with this lila here, that he was writing the Gita Govinda, and he was come to one verse where he come to the conclusion that Krishna was going to put his head on the lotus feet of Radharani. And he said, how is this possible? Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he had a writer's block. So Padmavati, it was about lunchtime, so Padmavati said, lunch is nearly ready. He said, well, just before lunch I'll go for a bath in the Ganga, and I'll be back shortly to have lunch. So when he went to the Ganga, Krishna himself stole his clothes, put his clothes on, went into the hut, and he started to write that additional verse in the Gita Govinda. And he was just about to go out when Padmavati saw him, and she mistook him for her husband. And she said, oh, here you are here. Are you going out again? You can't go out this time, you have to eat. So she sat him down and made him eat. So it said that he ate his offering twice. First she offered it to him in the deity form, and then he had to sit down and eat the dinner. And then he quickly went out, and just soon after that, Jayadeva came back in. And he said, oh, I'm so famished now, where's lunch? And she said, you've just had lunch, you just ate lunch. You came in, you wrote something, and then you had lunch. And his hair stood at end, he went running to his book, and there it was, that extra paragraph where it actually did state that Krishna did put his head on the feet of Radharani. So Krishna wrote that for him, and he was jumping up and down in ecstasy. Krishna wrote this, Krishna wrote this. And then Padmavati realised that she'd actually fed Krishna personally, and she fainted, and they were both in total ecstasy. So, of course, the Gita Govinda is a very beautiful treatise that is there for all the sort of devotees who've been purified. And he had a profound effect on Vaishnavism, that his Gita Govinda is sung every day in the Jagannath Puri Temple. We sing his Dastotram, and he was very influential in all the dances of Krishna. That's my favourite dance. Whenever I see Indian dancing, I try to work out which incarnation they're doing with their fingers and their hands, all the Indian dances, such a beautiful movements. And so he's one of the early Vaishnava acharyas that actually exhibited symptoms of prema bhakti. So we're following in this tradition that we have that opportunity to actually make that connection with Krishna and go deeper into our sadhana, due to the influence of these great acharyas and the mercy of Lord Caitanya, who's given us this wonderful treatise, and Krishna Das Kaviraj has written it all down. So all glories to the Vaishnava acharyas. And all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much. It's up our state. Does anyone want to say anything quickly? The bell hasn't gone yet. We're behind the 8 ball today. All good, Jai. Thank you very much, Jai. Hare Krishna.